In my journey to improve my thinking abilities, I came across Edward de Bono's book Six Thinking Hats. This book offered me a completely new perspective on thinking itself. It made me realize that thinking is not just a talent but a skill that can be structured and trained. What follows is a personal account of my learning experience and practical insights, not just as a record of growth, but as a potential path for others to follow. In the past, when facing problems, my mind often felt chaotic, emotions, logic, and information tangled together, making it hard to make clear judgments. Especially under pressure or in situations with conflicting viewpoints, I would fall into hesitation, anxiety, or even avoidance. When I read Dr. de Bono's statement that the biggest problem with thinking is confusion, it deeply resonated with me. His suggestion to separate types of thinking was a revelation. I started experimenting with the method of wearing one hat at a time, focusing on only one type of thinking at a time. Initially, I simply color-coded my thoughts in my notes, but over time, it became an instinctive pattern in how I analyzed problems. To my surprise, this method not only clarified my thoughts but also made my communication more structured. I began with the white hat thinking, as it was the easiest to start with. When addressing a problem, I deliberately focused only on facts, without mixing in judgment. For instance, I would write, users report that product A often crashes during use, rather than, product A is terrible. I asked myself, what are my sources of information? Are they objective and reliable? What data is missing? This approach helped me reduce emotional judgments and made my communication more persuasive. In the past, I often suppressed my emotions, thinking that being emotional was inefficient or irrational. But after learning red hat thinking, I began allowing myself to express feelings like, I feel anxious, or, my gut tells me this is off. I learned to acknowledge these feelings instead of instantly dismissing them. One time, in a team meeting, I felt uneasy about a proposal. Instead of opposing it outright, I noted it as a red hat warning, reminding myself to evaluate it rationally later. This helped me avoid making poor judgments based on emotion, while still respecting my intuitive signals. Yellow hat thinking wasn't easy for me at first, as I tend to get weighed down by real-world challenges. But I started forcing myself to find the positive side of difficult problems every day, no matter how small. For example, when a project was delayed, I tried to think from a yellow hat perspective. Maybe this is a chance to reassess the workflow or the role assignments. I even wrote yellow hat thinking in the corner of my work memos to remind myself to actively seek out hope and possibilities. With long-term practice, my thinking became more flexible and resilient, and that optimism positively influenced my teammates too. I used to think black hat thinking was just about being negative, but I later realized its true value lies in identifying risks. I began using the black hat to conduct pre-mortems, imagining how things might fail and what blind spots I might be missing. Before a major decision, I listed out all possible failure scenarios and the corresponding preventative measures. This gave me greater confidence in execution and helped me respond more calmly to doubts or challenges. Black hat thinking taught me how to stay alert and rational without falling into pessimism. Like many people, I once believed that creativity was an inborn gift. But Dr. de Bono emphasized that the green hat gives thinkers time and space to focus on creativity. I began setting aside imagination time, where I made no judgments, just wrote ideas freely. I brainstormed 10 strange solutions to customer complaints, and although many were unrealistic, a few evolved into the seeds of new processes. I also experimented with creative thinking tools like Scamper, reverse thinking, and first principles thinking, combining them with the green hat to stimulate innovation in a more structured way. Blue hat was the last one I mastered, but also the most central. I used it to organize my thinking sequence and avoid confusion. Before tackling complex tasks, I would list out the hat sequence I'd use. For example, start with white hat to gather facts, then red hat to identify emotions, followed by yellow hat to find positives, black hat to warn of risks, and finally green hat to generate solutions. I also used the blue hat to reflect on whether a decision over-relied on one hat or missed a crucial perspective. In team discussions, I would silently act as the blue hat facilitator, guiding others back to the main thinking path and preventing the mix-up of thinking types that often leads to conflict. At work, I don't explicitly say, I'm wearing the black hat now, but I consciously shift my thinking angles. During meetings, I mentally tag each person's comment according to its hat, which helps me stay focused and improves my listening. I also developed my own 6-hat note method, one sheet of paper divided into 6 sections, each recording one perspective on a given topic. This not only helps me organize my thoughts, but also improves the quality of my decisions. Sometimes I use sticky notes in 6 colors to represent each hat, building a thinking board on a wall or table, especially helpful in complex discussions or conflict resolution. When writing articles, designing lectures, or planning trainings, I now integrate the 6 thinking hat structure. It's become a key framework for me to build logical content and balance diverse viewpoints. Even after years of practice, I still face challenges. My red hat remains underdeveloped. I sometimes avoid facing true emotions, which leads me to ignore subtle intuitions. Under pressure, I tend to skip the yellow hat and jump straight into black hat thinking, becoming overly cautious or even giving up. Green hat thinking requires focused time and energy, which is hard to find in a high-paced work rhythm. To address this, I've made it a habit to schedule which types of thinking a problem most requires in my daily agenda. This helps me train different thinking styles intentionally and keep identifying and correcting my own thinking biases. 6 thinking hats transformed my former, chaotic thinking habits, allowing me to be more organized and confident in complex situations. It has improved my communication and decision-making, and taught me how to understand myself and others more rationally. It's not a technique to force yourself to think smarter, it's a way to reconcile with the messiness of thinking. A tool for gradual self-growth. Each hat is like a thinking companion, guiding me through confusion, anxiety, hesitation, and creativity. Keep practicing. Keep thinking. Keep applying. Don't rush to solve every problem, just focus on the hat you're wearing right now. When thinking gains structure, emotions are acknowledged, criticism becomes logical, and creativity has space, you'll find clarity even in a complex world. May the future versions of you and me continue to improve, lighting the path to maturity and wisdom with the 6 thinking hats.